I think success is consistency. The only thing we can control is ourselves, and we can only control ourselves if we've worked on firstly understanding ourselves, and secondly then trying to put ourselves in the best possible state, physically, mentally, emotionally, to then perform at our best. But the greatest skill any athlete can possess is not a forward defense, not a cover drive, not a flick, a leg spinner, whatever the sport. I believe it's the ability to focus your attention on the present moment. To me, the best athletes, they are comfortable in themselves as human beings. They're very hungry, they're very driven, they're very determined to be the best they can be, but they are also at peace with the fact they will fail. But the challenge for any athlete is to be able to leave their technique in the nets and go out and trust whatever they've got in that moment.
Cricket Life Stories with me, Neel Khagram. Today, we're joined by Tom Scollay. Tom, how's it all going out in Perth?
Hi, Neil. Thanks for having me on. Yeah, all going well here. It's a bit of a rainy, sunny day. So, getting into winter here in Perth, but all going well over here. Thank you.
Yeah, so Tom, in this chat, we're going to go through a bit of the mindset side of cricket specific to batting. Before we get into it, let's talk through your career. Obviously, in the UK, you've had time at Middlesex, grade cricket out in Australia. Run us through your playing career.
Look, I'll try and be as short as I can. I started playing cricket when I was 10. I moved to Perth. I grew up in a small town in Central Australia called Alice Springs. I moved to Perth a week before I turned 18 because that was to get out to play for Australia, which was my goal. I needed to leave the small town and get into one of the first-class systems. I worked my way up from sort of fourth grade to first grade in a short space of time at Melville Cricket Club, and I had many years playing grade cricket in Perth. When I was 20, I went over to the UK for my first stint of league cricket as an overseas pro in the Middlesex League at a club called Eastcote. And I've got a British passport, so I had a few friends and mentors say, why don't you go and try and play professionally in England? There's obviously more opportunities, there's more counties than just the 6 state sides here in Australia. So I had, 2008, 2009 playing league cricket. At the end of 2009, I got a trial with Middlesex. In my trial, my one and only match, I hit 66 off 33 balls, hit the first over for 24, which David Payne was bowling, who's still at Gloucester now, left arm, very good bowler. And on the back of that, Middlesex invited me back to trial with them at the start of the 2010 season. I came back to Perth and played grade cricket again, as I did. I went sort of 9 years where I went Perth, Darwin, Perth, England for 9 years. So I was playing all year round. I absolutely loved cricket, and I was aspiring to be the best I could be. And so 2010, I got my opportunity with the Middlesex Twos, an extended run. I got back there a month before the season started. I did some pre-season training with the group. And then I got a few runs. Got to a point where I was going pretty well, but they weren't signing me. I sort of said to them, look, I'm going to go on trial elsewhere. They said Richard Johnson, who has recently returned to Middlesex as their first team coach, he was the second team coach then. He said, no, Scholes, play one more game. I'm trying to get you signed. Just play one more game for us, because I had interest from Hampshire. And that game, I got 180 against Gloucester in the second 11, and Middlesex then offered me a summer contract for the remaining season into 2010. I made my debut, list day debut against Bangladesh at Lords on the Sunday of that week. And then I had 2 more years as a contracted player, 2011, 2012. Unfortunately, I didn't score enough runs. I wasn't consistent enough. I believe that on my day I was as good as anyone, but I just wasn't able to get there very often. I had a pretty lean 2011. 2010, I got the second 11 player of the year, averaged 50 odd in second 11, and I played a handful of first team white ball games. And then 2012 was up and down. It rained a lot, but I just didn't score enough runs. And I got sort of lost my contract at the end of the 2012 season. I came back to Perth and I continued playing first grade here. I've played over 200 first grade games here. I changed clubs and have played sort of 4 seasons at Perth Cricket Club. So I've played over 200 first grade games here and many years of first grade cricket. And so, yeah, I love cricket. I'm certainly not a guru player. I was someone who got the most out of myself a lot of the time, but A lot of the time, I didn't, because I didn't understand my thoughts and my emotions. And I know we're going to talk more about that, and that's something I'm really passionate about. But yeah, I'm really proud coming from a small town in Central Australia. I got to play at Lords, got to play against Bangladesh, and play with some of the game's great players like Andrew Strauss, Owen Morgan, Chris Rogers, Adam Voges. So yeah, there's my sort of cricket career, 20-year career in a few minutes.
And was a transition into coaching always in the back of your mind? Obviously, you're the founder, head man of what is now a global brand, Cricket Mentoring. Run us through that period in your life.
Yeah, that wasn't something that was always on the radar. I think I naturally have a bit of a knack for coaching. When I was a teenager, I was a tennis coach of the Pee-wee kids. I was 14 coaching the 6-year-olds, and I did that through my high school years. And I look back and I think I learned some really valuable skills during that period of communicating at a simple level. And then when I was the overseas pro at Eastcote, I had to do some coaching, but it was never something I was super passionate about back then. And then in 2014, so I finished with Middlesex September 2012. I came back to Perth. I went back and had one more league season in the Surrey League, this time in 2013, because I had an English partner who is now my wife. And then in July 2014, it was sort of the first winter I'd had where I wasn't playing any cricket since I'd become an adult, since I was a teenager. And I said to a friend who owns a cricket shop here in Perth, and they have nets and they do coaching. I said, oh, look, I've just moved into the area. I'm keen to do some coaching. And at the time, it was to earn a few extra dollars. I was working full time. But from that first session in July 2014, I got a real buzz when I suggested something and a player made a change and got a little bit better, and the joy it brought them. And so that feeling, that sort of real helping someone, that warm, fuzzy feeling I got from that first session has become addictive. And it's something that I really love about what I do, where one person grew into 2, grew into 4, and then I ended up quitting my full-time job a couple of years later and going into cricket mentoring full-time in July 2017. So yeah, I'm really, really fortunate to have a supportive wife who has allowed me to do something I'm passionate about and I love. But it's definitely over the years, it's grown on me, the coaching side of things.
Yeah, it's a fantastic system you do have in place. If anyone wants to do one-on-one coaching with you, we've also got things remote as well. We'll put all the links in the description of this video, so please do check it out. For now, let's just dive straight into the specifics of this chat about the mindset side of batting. And when it comes to batting, high level question, what do you believe defines success? Should players look beyond the game-to-game milestones?
I think success is consistency. So I think you look at anyone's career and you could pick one innings where they're great and one innings when they're not so good. They get a high score, they get a low score, and you can just judge them on those innings. And you could look at Virat Kohli right now and say he's not a good player because he's runs recently. But we're defined by our consistency over a long period of time. The reason averages are so sort of taken into consideration is they are a reflection of how many runs we score every time we bat. And for me, as I said like in my first year of Middlesex 2010, I averaged 50 odd. I was as good as anyone in that sort of squad at that time, but I wasn't able to get there consistently enough. And in 2011, 2012, my average was probably 20 something. So my definition of success is consistency. I think that every single cricketer, every single batter, and Kohli's going through it right now. Root went through it in 2019, 2020. Steve Smith's been through it. Every single player has lean periods. David Warner averaged 9 in the Ashes in 2019. He's one of the greatest players Australia's ever produced across all 3 formats. So it's not that we don't fail, because that is not possible. Every single batter, even the great Don Bradman, failed and made ducks and had low scores. But to me, the best players are more consistent. They get a start more often. Their median score is higher than a lot of others. They don't just go low score, low score, low score, low score, high score, but they also turn their good days into great days. They don't get 102, they get 202. They don't get 32, they get 92 not out. They make their good days great days. So for me, success is down to being consistent and trying to do it in all formats, in all conditions against all bowlers.
Is consistency another way of saying that you're almost trusting the process, seeing it as a process, your game?
Yeah. I think that that's a part. Like, you have to trust yourself to be consistent. It's really hard to get consistency in results or performances if you're not trusting your process. So it's a cliche in sport, but it's incredibly true. Like, focus on the process, don't focus on the outcome, because especially in batting, there's so many things. We're reactors. This is a great saying that Greg Shippard, who's a mentor of mine, Sydney Sixers coach, he talks about, is we react to the ball and to the bowler and to the wicket and the condition. So it's a bloody hard job we do as batters. It's very challenging. There's so many things going against us a lot of the times that the only thing we can control is ourselves. And we can only control ourselves if we've worked on, firstly, understanding ourselves, and secondly, then trying to put ourselves in the best possible state, physically, mentally, emotionally, to then perform at our best. But yeah, focusing on the outcome is a recipe for disaster, because there's so many things that can go wrong. And I've had guests on my podcast, some great cricketers, and people speak about, you might perform nowhere near your best, but get a good result. And vice versa, you might be like really going well and just you don't get the result. You get a bad decision, you get an amazing delivery, you get run out, whatever, and the result isn't, it doesn't go your way. So I think the best players are able to detach themselves from the result and really focus on the process. And to do that, you do have to trust yourself enormously.
If you like focus on young players, obviously you've coached many around the world now, do you find that one of the most common mistakes is that they almost forget to focus on the very next ball that's in front of them? I know in your content I've watched you talk about 4 Rs. Do you want to just cover that as well? And yeah, do you think, is that a fair statement I've just made as well?
Absolutely, except I would tweak it and say, I don't think they forget. I don't think they know how to focus on the next ball. So my 4 Rs, which I talk about, go into in a second, but I say to my athletes and in my talks and the people I sort of engage and coach and mentor, is the greatest skill any athlete can possess is not a forward defense, not a cover drive, not a flick, a leg spinner, whatever the sport. I believe it's the ability to focus your attention on the present moment, because the present moment is where we can perform at our peak. It's where we can perform to the level that we've trained ourselves to. But so many athletes get distracted, and their distractions come in the form of dwelling on the past or worrying about the future, getting anxious about what could happen, or thinking about like things like, in the batting sense, the scoreboard, who's watching, what your teammates are thinking, what the opposition have just said, what your average is, what happens if you get out. All these things are distractions, and they pull our attention away from what is relevant in the moment. And what is relevant in the moment is the next ball. So what working backwards from the idea that being able to focus your attention on the present moment is the number one skill for any athlete, I teach my athletes this process of 4 Rs. I think that the best batters and the best cricketers, the best athletes, they're thoughtful. They don't just go, oh, see ball, hit ball. That's too simplistic. And that to be a good player in all conditions, in all circumstances, you have to think through situations. You have to bring your skills to every moment, and every moment is different. So you have to think through, how do I utilize what I've got to win this moment, to chase this score, to get through this spell of bowling, etc. So they're thoughtful. So the first R is post ball. As soon as the balls happen, is reflect. So I'll run through the 4 Rs really quickly. Reflect, relax, reset, refocus. And the first R is reflect. So that's an opportunity to just reflect for a few seconds and learn from what's just happened. Okay, it's swinging away. I've got to watch my cover drive. I've got to make sure it's under my eyes. Oh, it's holding in the wicket. Probably can't drive again unless it's really under my eyes. Or I might need to like walk down the wicket, get some weight into the ball. They reflect, but they do it simply and quite quickly. A mistake that happen to many people is they reflect for too long and they start dwelling on the last ball. So as I said, they're facing up physically for the next ball, but their mind is in the past and they're worrying about what happened last ball. That's where mistakes happen. So reflection should only be a few seconds. It happens quite quickly. You store it in the back of your mind. Then you relax. And this is more for long format cricket, where you want to be able to bat for a long period of time. And if you want to be able to bat for a long period of time, you have to conserve your mental energy. I heard the analogy from the Cricket Australia sports psychologist that our brain is a limited resource. It's like a water tank. And if we turn on the tap at the bottom of the water tank drains. So it's our job to find ways to turn off the tap and keep our water tank as full as we can for as long as we can. And that to me is the relaxation part of batting. So I've played my shot, played and missed, hit it for four, whatever. I reflect, I then relax. And for me, it's walking away to square leg. It's looking in the distance, seeing what other games are going on, who's at the ground, letting my mind just wander, see if there's a plane in the sky. My mind can do whatever it wants. It's not taking my energy. Then I need to reset my body. And again, the mistake that happens from the relaxed is people might be thinking about a plane or what they're going to have for dinner that night, and they never switch back on. So then as I reset my body, I walk back towards the wicket. I start to think about the field and see if they've changed anything in the field. I go back to my reflection. I've fallen over last ball, so I remind myself I need to keep my head still. So my reset is resetting myself physically. I go through a little checklist of my grip, my feet, my head, and then the last thing I do is just push my head down the wicket to try and get in the position. So that's resetting my body, and it ties in a little bit with my reflection, reminding myself what had happened. And then the most important one is refocus. And as the bowler's sort of halfway through their run up for a seamer, it's only that last 4 seconds that I really need to focus. It's the milliseconds that the ball's delivered that I need to be fully focused, but I need to narrow my focus in that moment. So I might have been thinking about my head or my shoulder, but then bowler's running in and I have a cue word, I say something, and I encourage my athletes to say whatever it is that switches them on. So for me, I used to say game on, and that was a trigger. And then I would say, win this ball, win this ball, win this ball. And for me, that would give me a clear mind. I'm focused on the ball and just reacting to the ball. But if I wasn't saying anything, I might have a blank mind, and then I might have a thought come in, hit him over the top, like get him, or like take him on, or don't get out, or something that a thought would come in, it would distract me. And that's when I would make mistakes. So whenever I was very clear, it would be one thought, and it would be about the ball and reacting to the ball. And often when I was I'd get out and I'd walk off, I'd be thinking, I didn't switch on that ball. I didn't remind myself. I didn't go through my trigger and my process of focusing. So for me, that's the 4 R's. And I think they can be done anywhere against any opposition. If it's against a spinner, you relax for less because there's less time in between balls. If it's a T20 and you're only batting for 20 balls, you probably don't need to relax. You can think more about the game. Like, I need this run rate. This bowler's still got this to bowl. And you can use your energy because you're not batting for so long. So I hope that's given you a bit of an insight, but quite a long answer there.
What happens? What would you say when one of your athletes comes to you and says, it's not only in the moment, but before I go to bed the night before, even when you're just about to walk out, that fear of getting out, you just can't get over that feeling. It's almost stifling their game, their technique. What would you say if a player came to you and said, Coach, I'm just fearful of getting out and it's impacting my game?
I would start by saying, awesome, that's really normal. That shows you care. I would try and normalize it as the first thing and say, you're not strange, you're not unique in this feeling. It's everyone who cares. We're trying to perform well and we're judged on our results. We want to do well. That's normal. But I would try and remind them that it's just a game. It's just a game. And if you get out, yeah, you'll be disappointed, but life will go on. And to me, a big part of this it would depend on how much time I have with that athlete as well, because a big part of this sits about our identity as an athlete. And if we're identifying ourselves and we're giving our value as a human being by whatever score we get, well, then our whole identity is determined by that result. And we're going to be tense and anxious and fearful. To me, the best athletes, they are comfortable in themselves as human beings. They're very hungry. They're very driven. They're very determined to be the best they can be. But they are also at peace with the fact they will fail. They will get low scores, and that is okay. And that peace releases the fear. They say, look, I know I'm going to get out today, but I'm going to give it my best. And that, if you've got that mindset, you're going to play with a lot less fear of getting out than, oh my God, I have to do well today. I need to do well. It's my life depends. And a lot of people approach their sport and their cricket, their batting in this sense, with this thought that I have to do well. My life depends on this result. It's the most important thing in the world. And yes, our cricket is important. We care about it. We put so much time and energy into it. But for me, if this is a theme in a player, I would say, let's identify who you are as a human. Let's see what makes you you. It might be that you like your PS2, you like time with your family, you like going to the beach, you like long walks, all these other layers that make us us. If you can identify all of them and say, look, I'm someone who plays cricket. I'm not just a cricketer. My whole life doesn't depend on this result. Well, that allows you to remember that when you do make a mistake and you don't get a low score, you get a low score, you don't get the result you want. Well, that's okay. Life goes on. So for me, it's that process of like trying to make it not such a big deal and say, yes, I know you want to do well. You do care, but this innings isn't going to change your life, whether you get 100 or a duck. And try and release the importance, which is what we're so scared of failing and the negative outcome. But I try and take the importance off the outcome and just say, do your best.
Say if another one of your players came to you and said, always nicking off, struggling to play off the back foot, hook shots not going well, head positions all over the place. Do you believe technique-based training is the way to go and focus on specifics? Because obviously that's what the players come into you for, thinking there's something wrong there. Or do you think that technique-based training alone can almost be a distraction and scramble the mind on this topic of mindset as a batter?
I think it's an interesting discussion because I'm a big believer in technique. At Cricket Mentoring, we talk about and we teach there's 6 pillars of success: technical, tactical, mental, emotional, physical, and lifestyle. Now, mental and emotional are very much intertwined and sit together. But for what we say is your technique is the foundation of your game. And I look at a lot of good cricketers, a lot of average cricketers, and if there's something fundamentally wrong in their technique, in their bat swing or their positions, well, in my opinion, they have a limit to what they can do in the game. I think some of the great, like Rory Burns and Dom Sibley, are 2 pretty good red ball players. But there's a reason they don't do very well in white ball cricket and they don't play a lot of white ball cricket, because technically they're limited. Alistair Cook was another one, but that limitation gives them an ability to be very tight and only play to their strengths. But for me, I would personally look at them and see what's going on in their game. And if it is something technical, well, we'll address that technical thing. But the challenge for any athlete is to be able to leave their technique in the nets and go out and trust whatever they've got in that moment, and not try and control their technique while they're competing. So we sort of use these 2 sort of zones. You've got a learning zone where you're thinking and you're consciously trying to control and learn and develop technique. And then you've got a performance zone where at training, you're trying to just compete. And I think the best players, they train in both zones. They're not always just technical and learning. They have times when they're in their performance zone, but they're not just competing. They're not neglecting their fundamentals. They're not neglecting their basics, but they're competing and they're still working on those things. So look, I think it's a combination. And for example, I've got a really good young player, a guy called Teague Wiley over here in Australia, who's just won the Sheffield Shield as a 17-year-old, the youngest player ever to. And whenever he comes for a hit, I'm picking up little technical things about his game, and I'm trying to reset him back to like where he plays his best cricket, where his head's still, his weight's able to transfer back down the wicket instead of across. So I'm looking for technical things. But in between that, we have conversations most days, and they're about his game plans, his mindset, what he's doing in his life, etc. So, and he's very good at managing, okay, I'm working on my technique right now, but once it's time to compete, I just got to trust whatever I've got today, not take the worries of technique, the thoughts of technique with me. And I think just on that point, Marnus Labuschagne, who I think is one of the best red ball players in the world, obviously ranked number 2, I think, in Test cricket. After the India series in Australia a couple of years ago, he averaged 30 something. He wasn't at his best. And then in the Sheffield Shield final, he got 190. And on one of the mornings, they did a masterclass with him, and he spoke about how post-India series, he had changed his grip. And to me, he was doing that during the Sheffield Shield season. The Test series ended, the white ball series started, but he was playing Shield cricket. And he'd gone away, identified, he'd analysed, he'd reflected and learned that he wasn't hitting his straight drive as well as he'd like because his grip was a bit off. He went away and he worked on it. And in the Shield final, he was back to his best. So to me, that's a player who's thinking about their game and he's implementing, he's going to tweak things, he's tinkering, he's trying to change things while he's still playing. He's not waiting until April because the very best players very rarely get an off season because they're playing cricket all year round. So he's fixing things on the go technically, but he wasn't obviously, wouldn't have been letting that distract him while he's competing. So I hope that answers your question. It's a really tough one for young players to juggle, I reckon.
When it comes to common traits, you talk about the best players, you mentioned Marnus there, etc. What common traits do you think separate the best, from a holistic perspective, separate the best batters in the world from us mere mortals?
Well, going back to our 6 pillars of success, I think they're always working on themselves in all of the 6 pillars and they're trying to be the best they can be in all. When I look at my career, I worked hard technically, I worked hard tactically, but I never worked on my mindset or my emotions because I didn't understand the importance of it. I just you only know what you know, and I didn't understand how that impacted how I performed until I finished my professional career and I started to learn about these things. So I think that they're pretty good in all of theirs. They're physically really fit. They tactically understand the game well and how to manage risk, how to manage certain situations. So I think they're good in all 6 pillars. But I think, mate, I really think it's a deep hunger to be the best. I think that you watch your Smiths, your Marnus, your Root, they're never satisfied with mediocre. They're never satisfied with a 50 or 100. They want big scores. They want to be the match winner. They always want to be a part of the contest. They're not happy getting 120 and going to sit down for the next 2 sessions. They want to still be out there. They want to be in the contest as long as they possibly can be and influencing the outcome. So that's something that can't be taught. It's something that can't be coached. It comes from within. How deeply do you want it? For me, looking back, I wanted to be a part of the group. I wanted to be a professional cricketer, but I didn't deeply want to be the best I could be and the best in my team. And that meant I didn't get to that. So I think that there's many, many good cricketers who have good techniques and there's many good players with average techniques, with good mindsets, but it's the ability to combine them all, a really good understanding of the game as well. I think the very best players are students of the game and they're always understanding the game on a deeper level. The game's always teaching us things and they understand the game incredibly well. Whereas I think some that aren't as good don't have that deep understanding of the game. But mostly it's a hunger.
You also think, we talked for a period now specific on mindset side of cricket. Do you think that it's actually an untapped area globally when it comes to training? A lot focus on technique, but the mindset side of cricket, visualization, etc. You think it's an area that the game still needs to kind of buy into globally and more focus on it?
Absolutely. Like I look back at my time at Middlesex and it finished 10 years ago. So things have probably advanced a lot since then. But we had a batting coach, we had a bowling coach, we had physios and masseuses, and we had a sports psychologist who was excellent, a guy called Steve Sylvester. But I never ever sat down one-on-one with him. It was always a group setting once a month, and he would just share some ideas and concepts. There was nothing ever about me as an individual and how I can get myself to my best. And I know that a lot, like most sporting organizations these days, professional sporting organizations are investing a lot. You look at the NBA, they've all got mental health coaches now, not just mental performance coaches. The big sort of sports organizations, the Premier League, are investing a lot of money in these things. But as it trickles down, absolutely, it's not spoken enough about. I think there are more and more sports psychologists around, but there's just millions of cricketers and there's not a great access to this. Often it's expensive and you have to be in a high performance setting to access these things. And that's why I've been really passionate about this, because it's the stuff I didn't know when I was young and I wish I knew, because it could have changed my career if I knew some of these concepts and some of these ideas. And it's why, obviously, you've got me on to talk about these things, because I've spoken a lot about it, these sort of topics, these sort of ideas on our YouTube channel and on our social content, which is all free. I do one-on-one coaching with athletes, and I do, we have our online community, which people pay a small monthly subscription for, but we try and, like what you're doing, we try and share some concepts and ideas on a broader sense that people can go away and implement, because it's just not available. And I really think that would make a huge difference to a lot of people. But it's scary. It's scary to talk about the mind, and it's really complex, and it's hard to measure performance, and it's hard to measure improvements mentally. Physically, you've got to, your eyes can see it, but mentally it's hard. So people just leave it, which, yeah, I think the more that mindset and mental skills can be discussed, the better.
Well, it's been a fascinating chat. Just to end on, a young player is watching this. What is the one piece of advice you want them to take away from this chat on top of batting?
Good question. I would say learn about yourself. Learn about yourself as a person. What makes you tick? What makes you excited? What makes you up for a challenge? What scares you? What excites you? How do you perform at your best? Are you really energized and up for a fight, or are you really calm and relaxed and sort of trying to keep your heart rate down? Learn about yourself as a person. What thoughts trigger what emotions? Do you, when you get sort of start thinking about a negative outcome, do you get sweaty palms and really anxious? When you start thinking about a positive outcome, do you sort of relax and just get that warm, fuzzy feeling? When do you play at your best? Learn about yourself, and learn about yourself as a player, and then start trusting what you're good at. Something I didn't do. I was quite good square of the wicket. I was quite loose, but it would work. And then I tried to change. I got to Middlesex, got my contract, and I tried to change and become tighter and hit the ball down the ground, because that in the V. But that was not who I was, and that detracted from my performances, because I was trying to be something that I wasn't. So, and I didn't have a mentor to speak to about it. I didn't have someone to say, Skulls, just trust yourself, play your way, just become better at picking the right ball. So learn about yourself as a human, but learn about yourself as a cricketer, and learn about the game. Be a student of the game. Always be listening to commentators, watching the game, thinking about field settings and why they're doing this, why are they doing that, how's he getting out, and these sort of things. Because if the more you can understand those three things, yourself as a human, yourself as a cricketer, and the game, that is where you're going to have success on the cricket field.
Perfect. Appreciate your time, and all the best for the weeks ahead. Thank you.
My pleasure. Thanks, guys. And anyone watching, yeah, appreciate it. Check us out, Cricket Mentoring on Instagram or YouTube. But yeah, thanks for having me on, and all the best to your followers and supporters.
Neel Khagram, Cricket Love Stories, Tom Scollay. Thank you.